Funny enough, my build actually began by measuring this little piece here on the 1/12 scale Sabine Hasbro Black Series. But the paint job came from the picture on the StarWars.com Easter egg article. I modeled it up in SolidWorks and then I quickly printed both in FDM and in resin. On FDM, it will work. I did a poor job of setting up supports, but it shows that even without supports in areas, it'll work. On the resin build, I was pleased with the way it came out, but I saw some places where I could improve. Such as where you see the nozzle is printed as one piece, I decided to make it two pieces so that if there is any variance on the wall thickness of the handle, you can adjust for that. It actually was a little snug on the original piece. On the second part that I decided to improve upon is the canister in the back. I modeled it as in two pieces actually attached to the handle originally. I decided to make it its own part. That worked out really well. Then I got on to reprinting everything and painting. I gave everything a base coat of black primer. In doing so, I found some discrepancies, some little divots in one side of the handle. I decided to quickly address those with some modeling paste, let that dry, sanded it, and painted it back up. And then gave everything a coat of aluminum. It was a pretty windy day painting, and so as you can see, the paint was coming back at me and I had to get pretty close to the handle to get it to paint. But this is only the bottom layer of the print. There's actually going to be a dark gray color that's going to go over that. But before I do the dark gray, I want to pre-add some scratches using liquid latex. I apply the liquid latex using a tool for clay modeling. This little tool has silicone tips, so once the latex dries on it, it's easy for me to peel it off so that I can reuse it on the next project. When it comes to weathering, there's a couple of schools of thought. I'm kind of over on the more is better, not less is more on the Star Wars stuff. Unless you're doing an Empire theme, everything seems to be worn quite a bit. And doing this weathering was actually pretty therapeutic. Setting the handles aside to dry, it's on to painting the control knobs. This was pretty easy. There's just a little notch on each that has to have a color. There's a red, a blue, a black, a green, and a yellow. So I grabbed one of each colors from one of my paint sets and just dabbed the nose on a popsicle stick and used that tiny little bit off of the popsicle stick to fill in the notch. As you can see, it didn't take much at all. In fact, in most cases, I actually ended up with more on the popsicle stick than I even needed. So if you think about it, using those 5 colors, it's kind of like a printer, and the user could dial in the color that they want. It's actually kind of an ingenious idea and would be something that I would see in the Star Wars universe. And here's my painted knobs. Then I move into dry fitting everything into place. You can see that I accidentally painted the trigger off screen. That's just using red and black acrylic paint. I did a wash in black and then painted over in red and then dirtied it up with black again. And then after test fitting, I went out and using a really old can of gray paint, I painted up the handles. I gave that a couple hours to dry, and then it's on to stripping off all the liquid latex and getting the weathered look. I probably should have waited longer before I went through a couple of these steps, because my tweezers were actually digging through the silver all the way down to actually the base flat black base coat that I did for a primer. And here's the finished cleanup, and I'm now going to assemble. The trigger can go on either way. It does have one end slightly larger than the other, so I make that the top end. For the knobs, I'm just going to put a dab of glue on the inside, and I have pins that go into those little spots, and that will lock it together and allow it to still spin. If you notice, one of my knobs isn't painted. I did not notice this while doing this little assembly until I had actually glued it in place. So if you print extra pieces, make sure you move those aside and don't have those sitting there for you to accidentally grab. Stupid mistakes happen, and this was one of them on my part. I was more worried about not getting my fingers glued together that I wasn't even looking at the color. So here I'm gluing in the last two pieces, the second to last being unpainted. I turn it over and notice, wait a minute, that's not painted, so I'm trying to get it off. Found the one that needs to go there. Looking for some tools, panicking because the super glue's already setting in. Yeah, that's not small enough. Maybe these will get under there. So I finally popped that off. Realize that I have the right one. Do a little bit of cleanup. And then go back to assembling like I did nothing wrong. I go and glue on the canister, of which now I only have one backing pin because the other backing pin had to be reappropriated to fix the button issue I had. But, you know, nothing a little super glue can't fix. And then I put the two pieces together. Somehow I managed to get that done correctly. And then I move on to adding some more weathering. So I'm taking some burnt umber oil paint and I am just quickly rubbing it on with a cloth and then rubbing it back off. And here is the final spray gun, ready to go do some graffiti. If you're interested, I will be putting these files up on my Cults 3D page if they're not already up already. Thanks for watching.